Jimmy, back to league action tomorrow afternoon, and important to not only get the game on, but get going with the league fixtures as well, given that out of the FA Trophy and need to start putting the points back on the board.
Yeah, we're a lot of games behind other people. Our league position looks healthy on points per game, but we've got to take care of business now. We've got to start winning games, as you said, and it's important that we don't have any disruption now within our league campaign, and the game is on tomorrow, and we get back into that groove and that flow of playing competitive fixtures. I think it's really, really important. So we know the importance of tomorrow in terms of getting another 3 points on the board and chipping away, and just trying to make sure that we stay as competitive as we possibly can in our league campaign.
It wasn't ideal having the 2-week break once again, but do you feel the momentum from the Chesterfield victory was carried on to the Aldershot game despite the defeat?
I think signs of how we want to play and how we want to operate, most definitely, which I'd kind of been missing over probably 3 to 4 performances, which is basically disappointing for us as a group, not just as a coaching staff. But I think you probably feel it more as a coaching staff when you work a certain way and you prepare a certain way, and your programme is delivered a certain way out on the grass when it's so far from that on a match day. And I think the players are they're old enough and wise enough and experienced enough to understand that we'd come away from what we do and how we play, and we've most definitely seen signs of returning to that way against Chesterfield. And as you said, it was a defeat, and we've exited the FA Trophy. But in saying that, there was some real positives to take in terms of the way we approached the game.
What pleased you most about getting back to our way, I guess?
Probably a bravery and a desire to get on the ball. An ability to trust people, an ability to not hide behind people, and probably a little bit more product in around the final third, which I think in most games I think probably all but 2 games this season, and one was when we had 10 men, we've had positive possession, and we've had more final third entries than the opposition, but the opposition have had more shots and more crosses. And reflecting back on the performance the other night, we certainly had a lot more control and possession than them, a lot more final third entries than them, but we had that end product, and that was important. It's you often talk about the game, and the most important things is both boxes, and unfortunately the other night we were a little bit lax in certain areas defending our box. We've gifted them a penalty, really. We've switched off a little bit on a counter attack, and then the free kick's a little bit freakish. It goes underneath the wall or through the wall and then underneath booty, and it's uncharacteristic, to be fair. So we need to be better in that area of the pitch, but top end of the pitch, other than being a bit more ruthless. And I think we probably could have scored another 3 or 4 goals on the night. James Ball probably should have had a hat trick. The pleasing thing for me was that creativity and a little bit more clinical in around that final third with our end products.
Like I said, plenty of chances, and I guess the front, the 2 number 10s and Kyle up front, really he led the line well, and obviously Joe and Borley behind could have got goals themselves, and obviously Borley got his, but the togetherness of that sort of front trio looking like it's working.
Yeah, we've and we will continue to do so. We'll continue to operate that top end of the pitch differently, where that look like 2 9s and a single 10. Whether we change shape underneath the forward players, the front players, that's something for consideration. The things that we will always stick to is the principles of how we want to play and what we want to do in order to build and control and create. But you look at those 3 players in particular. Kyle's growing, week by week, game by game. His hold up play and his body work to receive the ball and receive against pressure was excellent. He's a big boy. He's going to always be an aerial threat, but his ability to get his little touches for runners to get off him was really, really, really clinical and really clean and really good on Tuesday night. But you look at anybody in the forward area of the pitch, they're judged on goals created and goals scored. And if you look at it, Kyle scored. He's had a major involvement with a flick on. Joe gets an assist for James Ball. James Ball, as we speak about, on any other given day, probably should have come away from that with a match ball and 3 goals. So they're doing their job top end of the pitch, and we've got to make sure that, and I said this to the players yesterday, we've got to make sure now that if we are getting into positions where we're scoring goals and we're creating chances in around that area of the pitch, we've got to make sure we have a shutout mentality back end of the pitch.
I guess looking ahead to tomorrow and Dover, given they're down the bottom, it might seem that we're going to the game as favourites, but given the amount of games they've played, maybe they could have had more points on the board, and obviously being the National League game, it won't be as easy as it looks in the form table.
No, that's one thing I'm learning on the job very, very quickly, and especially about this league, and I think I've mentioned it to yourself in interviews that, I really sincerely believe this. Yeah, you look at the league table and looks like Torquay are running away with it. I don't think Torquay have had, every game's been an easy game when they've picked up results. They've had some games where they've scored late on in games. I think they've had some tough games themselves. I really, really sincerely believe that anybody on any given day can beat each other, and that said with Dover as well. And and you look at what they've got in their squad. They've got experience. They've got players that have been there and done it. They've got players that have been up in the league above. And had careers in and around the Football League. So they're a strong outfit, and we've got to make sure we take care of business. Whether we're playing a team down the bottom end of the table, mid-table, or top end of the table, the games are difficult. We've got to make sure that we stick to our way of doing things. And like any game plan, there'll be areas that we can look at and get excited in terms of we think we can exploit. But also they've got a threat. They've got a real threat. That threat comes via top end of the pitch with two lively, pacey centre forwards who want to threaten and want to get in behind you, and also they're a big physical team, and they don't turn down opportunities to put the ball in around your box. They've got a good physical presence. Set plays is obviously massive and paramount importance with probably 95% of teams within this league, and that's something we've got to make sure we're concentrated on tomorrow. So yeah, we don't go in with a mentality of this is Dover, they're in X league position, we're going to win the game. That hasn't happened. If you look and you're forensic enough with our league performances, the so-called bigger teams and better teams on paper, we've performed very, very well, and the ones that maybe who on paper are less attractive, or in and around the bottom half of the table, we've struggled. So mentally for us, it's going to be a big mental test that our away form hasn't been nowhere near good enough this season. That's something we want to rectify, and we need 3 points on the board tomorrow.
I was going to mention the away form, but I guess the psychological point of view is that a win does take us back into those playoff positions, and mentally going forward, that gives a real boost.
Yeah, every game we go into with a 3-point mentality, and that's my personal approach, and and hope that's been transpired into the players, and the players' way of thinking. I look at it, if we were adding different form away from home and at home, you'd look into things. At this moment in time, our home form is unbelievable. We've lost one game at home all season in all competitions, and we've had some fantastic performances and fantastic results. Do we plan and prepare any differently to our home games than away? No. Do the opposition do anything different on when we do our due diligence and we do our game planning and look at the common trends and how teams set up formation wise, how they play, where the defensive line will be? Will it be a high line or a low block? No, they don't change. So we as a staff scratch our head and come away and just looking and saying, is there anything we can do differently to affect our away form and to rectify that? There's nothing. We've just at this moment in time, the stats are that our away form isn't very good and our home form is good, and we've had home performances where we've not performed particularly well, but we've won games, and we've got to have that mentality. We've got to find a way of winning games when things aren't going our way, but then also when things are going our way, we've got to be ruthless, and we've got to take our chances and be a lot more clinical around that final third. And looking at the games that we have lost away from home, the Woking one, we should have been 2 up at half time, and I think the game's dead and done. The Maidenhead one, again, we should have been 2 goals to the good, and and there's been lots of occasions. I think probably looking back at some of our away form, we performed very, very well on Tuesday night. The only performance away from home for me that we were massively under par was the game against Sutton. And Sutton deservedly beat us, 4 goals to 1. So we've got to make sure that we, from a psychological point of view, and to make sure we're in around the mix, we've got to get 3 points tomorrow.
And just finally, I know Joe came off with cramp on Tuesday night. Were there any other niggles and bumps and bruises?
No, other than fatigue, and and you mentioned at the start of the interview that obviously the almost a 2-week layoff again, it does dent you. It does put a dent in, because there's nothing, even if the lads were able to get out and go for a run, which they weren't, they were locked in. They were confined to their home environments. You can't recreate football-specific movements and stopping and turning, accelerating and things like that. So we had one or two that were really fatigued towards the end of the game, and we've had to wrap a couple up in cotton wool yesterday. We'll reassess one or two today and just see where we're at. So I'm hoping, touch wood, there won't be anything that rules anybody out tomorrow, but there are one or two that felt the effects of having that 10-day layoff and playing a tough physical game on a heavy pitch on Tuesday night.
And Cameron Archer didn't make the squad on Tuesday night with injury problems with him.
Yeah, so Cameron had some abdominal issues in the game against Chesterfield in the away tie. He'd gone back to Aston Villa, obviously to coincide as well with the COVID layoff that we had. He went back to Aston Villa for them to look at for the club doctor to look at him and be reassessed by their physiotherapists. We were hoping that Cameron would be back anytime soon, within the next 2 to 3 days. It's transpired that he's had a little bit more of a setback and a delay, and Cameron will probably remain at Aston Villa for the next 2 to 4 weeks. So that's going to be a big blow to us in that top end of the pitch, because for a young boy who's come in and done very, very well, and he always causes the opposition a threat because of his got natural ability to get away and run away from people.